Imagine a king so powerful, so radiant, that he was known as the Sun King, a monarch who built the magnificent Palace of Versailles, a symbol of absolute power that still dazzles the world today. This was Louis XIV of France. His reign of 72 years is the longest of any monarch of a sovereign country in European history. He was the epitome of glamour, power, and divine right. But the end of his story is far from glamorous. In fact, it's a grim tale of agony, medical malpractice, and a final public decay that stands in stark contrast to the brilliant life he led. Today, we're uncovering the horrific death of the Sun King, Louis XIV. To understand the end, we must first appreciate the beginning of his decline. By 1715, Louis was 76 years old. In an era when life expectancy was barely half that, he was an ancient figure. He had outlived his son, his grandson, and most of his contemporaries. His body, once strong and athletic, was a roadmap of a life lived to the extreme. He had survived smallpox, numerous fevers, and even a brutal surgery performed without anesthesia. He was a man who believed himself to be semi-divine, God's chosen representative on earth. But even the Sun King could not outrun mortality. In early August of 1715, after returning from a hunting trip, Louis complained of a sharp pain in his left leg. At first, his physicians dismissed it as sciatica, a common ailment of the elderly. They prescribed their usual remedies, donkey's milk, purgatives, and rest. But the pain didn't subside. It grew worse. The king's leg began to change color, turning from red to a dark, ominous purple, and then to black. The royal chambers, once filled with the scent of orange blossoms and expensive perfumes, began to carry a foul, sweetish odor. The Sun King's leg was rotting while he was still alive. The diagnosis was clear, at least to modern eyes: senile gangrene. It's a condition where body tissue dies because of a lack of blood flow. In the 18th century, the term was understood, but the treatment was barbaric and often fatal. The king's primary physician, Guy Crescent-Fagan, was hesitant. He and his team of doctors knew the only potential cure was amputation. But how could you take a knife to the sacred body of the king? Amputating a limb from the man who called himself the state was unthinkable. The procedure itself was incredibly risky, with a high chance of death from shock or infection. So, they dithered. They argued. They applied lukewarm poultices and gave the king strong spirits to dull the pain. As the gangrene spread up his leg, the stench of decay became overpowering. Courtiers who attended the king's daily public ceremonies, the Asterix Levy and the Cauchy, had to fight the urge to gag. Imagine the scene. The most powerful man in Europe, a figure of almost mythical status, slowly decomposing in his own bed, surrounded by the gilded splendor of Versailles. The contrast is almost surreal. Desperate, the court turned to a man from the south of France, a quack named Lebrun, who claimed to have a miracle cure. He arrived with an elixir, a secret concoction that he promised would restore blood flow and save the king's leg. The royal physicians, out of options, allowed him to treat the king. Lebrun bathed the king's blackened leg in his potion and made him drink some of it. For a brief moment, there was a flicker of hope. The king felt a prickling sensation and declared he was feeling better. The court rejoiced, but it was a false dawn. The elixir was useless, likely just a mix of alcohol and herbs. The gangrene continued its relentless march. By the end of August, the situation was hopeless. The infection had spread throughout his body. The pain was so excruciating that the king could barely speak. Yet, even in his final days, Louis XIV never lost his sense of royal duty and performance. He knew he was dying, and he decided to stage his death with the same grandeur with which he had lived his life. He called his 5-year-old great-grandson, the future Louis XV, to his bedside. In a faint but firm voice, he gave the young boy his final advice. "My child, you are going to be a great king. Do not imitate me in my taste for building, nor in my love of war. On the contrary, try to live in peace with your neighbors. Try to relieve your people, which I have been so unfortunate as not to be able to do." It was a stunning admission of regret from a monarch who had rarely shown any. He then addressed his weeping courtiers. With a surprising touch of dark humor, he looked at them and said, "Why do you weep? Did you think I was immortal?" It was a moment of pure Louis XIV, acknowledging his own mortality while gently mocking the theatrical grief of those around him. He met his end with a stoicism and grace that amazed everyone present. On September 1st, 1715, 4 days before his 77th birthday, the sun finally set. Louis XIV, the Sun King, died. The official cause of death was gangrene. His 72-year reign was over. The autopsy later revealed the full extent of the horror. The gangrene had consumed his entire leg and had spread into his abdomen. His body was so decayed that the surgeons had difficulty completing the procedure. But the indignities didn't end with his death. The king's body was embalmed, and his heart was placed in a separate casket, as was tradition for French kings. During the French Revolution, decades later, revolutionaries broke into the royal crypt at the Basilica of Saint Denis. The tombs were desecrated, and the mummified remains of the kings, including Louis XIV, were thrown into a mass grave. As for his heart, it had a bizarre afterlife. It was passed around and eventually ended up in the possession of a British aristocrat. William Buckland, a dean and eccentric geologist with a penchant for eating, well, everything. Legend has it that at a dinner party, when presented with the shriveled heart of Louis XIV in its silver casket, Buckland declared, "I have eaten many strange things, but have never eaten the heart of a king before," and promptly ate it. While this story is likely an exaggeration, the fact that it exists speaks to the strange and macabre fate of the Sun King's remains. From a life of unparalleled splendor to a death of agonizing decay and a truly bizarre post-mortem journey, the end of Louis XIV is a powerful reminder. It shows that beneath the crowns, the velvet robes, and the divine titles, even the most powerful rulers are ultimately human, subject to the same frailties and the same final, undignified end as any of their subjects. The sun may have set on the Sun King in the most horrific way, but his legacy, embodied by the timeless beauty of Versailles, shines on. Thanks for watching. If you found this glimpse into the darker side of history fascinating. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories you won't find in the textbooks. Let us know in the comments which historical figure's final days you'd like us to explore next. See you in the next video.